Hello everybody, I'm Axel1324 and welcome to my channel. Today we're going to be discussing the console wars and why I believe they're over. But before we go into why they're over, this is part one and we are going to review the history of the console wars. Let's get into it. The console wars were started in the early 90s by Sega. Nintendo was dominating the console market with the Nintendo Entertainment System and then following it up with the Super Nintendo Entertainment System, and Sega wanted a piece of the pie. In order to attract gamers to the Sega Genesis, they started a campaign that highlighted everything their console did that the competitor didn't. They even made it a catchphrase with commercials like this.
Genesis does
16-bit arcade graphics.
You can't do this on Nintendo. Genesis does
16-bit sports action.
You can't do this on Nintendo. Genesis
Does.
Genesis
Does.
Genesis
Does.
Genesis
Does.
Genesis does
Get Joe Montana free, Pat Riley free, Buster Douglas free, Super Monaco GP free, or Collins free.
Genesis does
What Nintendo don't.
Oh yeah, who could forget? Sega does what Nintendo don't. This is the basis of the console war. What does this console do or have that the other console doesn't? And Sega highlighted this mainly by catering to adults, whereas Nintendo stuck to the family friendly. And the best example of this is Mortal Kombat. The Sega Genesis had blood and all the fatalities that the arcade did, and the Super Nintendo didn't. And so it became the cool console if you were growing up. I know Mortal Kombat is the reason I chose Sega Genesis instead of Super Nintendo. And the console war bled over into the schoolyard. I remember having arguments with my friends that, oh, this one had blast processing or that one had higher bits. This one has a better resolution, etc., etc., etc. And all this continued until the early 2000s. You know, by the early 2000s, PlayStation was in and Sega was on its way out. In the 2000s, it transitioned from console features to gaming franchises. And PlayStation did this heavily with third-party franchises. If you thought about Final Fantasy, you thought PlayStation, where historically they were with Nintendo. If you thought Crash Bandicoot, you thought PlayStation, even though Crash Bandicoot was not owned by PlayStation. If you thought about Halo and if you thought about Master Chief, you thought Xbox. If you thought Mario, you thought Nintendo. Gaming franchise became more synonymous with each brand instead of just, you know, this console can do so many bits or blast processing or whatever it was the talk back then. And then in February of 2001, Sega left the home console market. And at the same time, Microsoft with Xbox announced that they were coming in. Xbox was successful in the console war because they had the most powerful hardware with the Xbox and the Xbox 360 and had a great lineup of exclusives. This worked for them at first. In my opinion, the last generation to feature the console wars fully is the 8th gaming generation, which is the generation of the Xbox One, the PlayStation 4, and the Nintendo Wii era. And so let's review one by one what each company's last salvo was in the console war that ended the whole thing. Nintendo was heavily involved in the console wars in the early 2000s. However, they shifted away from it in about 2006-ish with the launch of the Wii. And the Wii had one big glaring problem. That's these right here. The reason these were a problem were because as easy as they were to use, third-party developers were not going to take the time to make games that worked with 8-button controllers. And if you include the thumbsticks, they were technically 10-button controllers. Suddenly dumbed down to what is essentially 5-6 buttons and an IR receiver. So Nintendo ran into an issue with third-party support. They didn't have it. Nintendo decided to bolster their own in-house development, and they found phenomenal success with the Wii. Games such as Super Mario Galaxy 2 became instant hits and classics, and that is where the Wii U also came in, but the Wii U had no success whatsoever, mainly because of bad marketing and terrible naming. But they also had another success in the console wars, and that is the 3DS. And the 3DS featured great games like this in handheld. So while Nintendo was struggling in the console space, they were dominating in the mobile space. Nintendo's final push in the console war is the Wii U. And the Wii U is somewhat underappreciated, mostly because of the bad marketing. It's a good console with really good games, but it's not a great console. And it tried to be a mobile console mainly because they wanted to keep people playing. And the Wii U was just a bad name. Most people thought the Wii U was just a pad and not a whole new console. And the marketing really hurt them in the long run, and they completely went obscure. Nobody was talking about Nintendo at all for a while there. And that is where Nintendo ended their last hurrah into the console war and where their focus shifted. And we'll talk about that in the next part. But for now, let's move on to the next company. PlayStation. What can we say about them that hasn't already been said? They have a great 8th generation console in the PlayStation 4 with some of the best games ever made. And the main reason for this is because PlayStation couldn't produce a Halo killer in the PlayStation 3 era. So they shifted away from trying to kill Halo to defining themselves, and they found success in cinematic, story driven narrative games that just pulled at your heartstrings, at your emotions. And wow, PlayStation has two of the best selling consoles in the market, with the PlayStation 2 before and now the PlayStation 4, both consoles breaking over 100 million. And everybody I know has a PlayStation, everybody I don't know has a PlayStation, probably. And because of this, PlayStation has ended the console war on top. They are the big dog, they are the market leader. The PlayStation 4 is their last push in the console war, and they were very successful. Their marketing was top notch, and everybody loves them. Everybody loves their games, everybody loves the console. They can do no wrong. Xbox. Oh man, Xbox. Oh, how the mighty had fallen. In the 8th console generation, they were so tone deaf to gamers that it cost them, and it cost them dearly. The Xbox One was a good console and it was a good entertainment system. And I believe Xbox went for the old adage, why be the master of one where you can be the master of none? And it didn't work out in their favor. It was mismanaged, studios closed, first party development went out the window. I think they were down to about 5 or 6 studios at one point, trying to compete against 13 studios that the competition had, and it just didn't go well. And not only that, but the Xbox One was underpowered. For the Xbox original and the Xbox 360, Xbox O was always the most powerful console. And that is a selling point, whether anybody wants to admit it or not. Power matters. But also more than power, also your first party matters. And Xbox just didn't have it. And third party support matters. And Xbox also didn't have that. Xbox was just being mismanaged in the hardware area, in the first party area, and the third party area. And it was just a travesty. The Xbox One is a good console. There's lots of fun games on it. Great first party games. Some of the most fun I've had. Their services are still good, but it's not anymore about what your console could do. It's about the content on it. So Xbox ended the 8th generation in dead last place, and that's just not a good place to be. All right, now I know why you're asking. Axel, we already know all this stuff. What does that have to do with the console war ending? And the main reason for this is because of the way the console war was fought. Companies put out these boxes that played these games to get you to buy them to engage. And the only way you were going to engage with these boxes was if you bought them. So the way they did this was with exclusive content. first party content, third party exclusivity deals. And so all this thought of how to get you to spend your hard earned money began to change. The way the console war was fought was to get you to buy consoles. The main reason the way that companies come for you to buy their consoles has ended is because of technology. We are heavily into the information age, into the digital era, into the convenience era. I believe that convenience is really going to be the way that the next war is being fought and why the console war has ended. And it ended with a PlayStation on top and Nintendo and Xbox just kind of left in the dust. I hope you enjoyed this video as to why I believe the console wars is ending. I'll see you in part 2. Don't forget to like and subscribe, and I will catch you guys next time.